You have achieved things most people only dream about, and you still don't feel like enough. The career is there. The income is there. The title, the recognition, the evidence of success. All of it, visible, measurable, real. And yet at night, in the quiet, something refuses to settle. A voice that says, it still isn't enough. You still aren't enough. If you have ever lived in that gap, between what you have built and what you actually feel, then the story we are about to examine was written for you. His name was Jacob, and he is the most psychologically precise portrait of the high-achieving, identity-fractured overachiever in all of Scripture, not because he failed, but because he succeeded relentlessly, brilliantly, at enormous personal cost, and it still wasn't enough. Until the night everything broke. Jacob was born second, not by much. He came out of the womb gripping his twin brother Esau's heel, as if even at birth he was reaching for something he wasn't supposed to have. His name reflects it. Jacob means supplanter, deceiver, the one who grabs. Before he spoke his first word, his identity was already coded as a striver, as someone defined by what he didn't have but was trying to take. Esau was everything the culture valued: hairy, physical, a hunter, a man's man. Jacob was quiet. He stayed intense. He was his mother's son, and Isaac, their father, preferred Esau. This is where the imposter blueprint is laid down, not in a dramatic event, in the daily accumulation of a child learning that love is distributed unevenly, and that the person who receives more of it looks nothing like you. The psychological conclusion that forms in a child under those conditions is not, I am worthy and will find my own path. It is, I am not enough as I am. I need to become something else, and the something else always looks like the person who got the blessing. The stolen blessing scene is one of the most visceral passages in Genesis. Jacob's mother Rebekah dresses him in Esau's clothes. She puts goat skin on his arms so that when his blind father reaches out to touch him, he feels like his brother. Jacob walks in and claims a blessing that was never meant for him by pretending to be someone he was not. And it worked. Isaac blessed him. The words were spoken. The inheritance was sealed. Jacob got exactly what he had engineered his life to get. And then immediately, he had to run. Because that is always what happens when you build your identity on a stolen foundation. You get the blessing. And the moment you have it, you are more exposed than you were before. Because now the world is celebrating a version of you that doesn't exist. The applause lands on the costume, and the person inside the costume knows it. This is the specific cognitive dissonance of the high achiever who has built a life on performance. The promotion comes through. The deal closes. The goal is reached. And instead of relief, there is a cold, quiet awareness. They are celebrating the person I pretended to be. What happens when they find out? Jacob spent the next 20 years in relentless accumulation. He worked 7 years for the woman he loved, then 7 more. He outmaneuvered his father-in-law Laban, who was himself a master manipulator. He bred the stronger livestock. He made himself wealthy. By any external measure, Jacob was winning. 2 wives, 2 concubines, 11 sons, vast herds. And he kept moving, always building, never stopping. Because the overachiever cannot stop. Not because they are ambitious, because they are afraid. The striving is not a strategy, it is a medication. As long as you are achieving, you don't have to sit with the question that waits in the silence. Who are you when the performance stops? Modern psychology calls this the false self, the persona constructed to earn approval, to win the blessing, to survive in environments where your real self was not enough. The false self is not a lie exactly. It is intelligent. It learned what was required and built something that could deliver it. But maintaining it is exhausting in a way that no one outside of it can see. You are carrying 2 selves simultaneously, the one the world sees, and the one you actually are. And the gap between them is the source of a specific kind of depletion that sleep does not fix, that promotion does not fix, that no external win can touch. Because the exhaustion is not from working too hard. It is the tax paid for living a life that is fundamentally misaligned with who you actually are. Then came the night at the Jabbok. Jacob was alone. His family had crossed the river ahead of him. His possessions were gone, and tomorrow he would face Esau, the brother he had deceived, for the first time in 20 years. He had run his entire adult life, from Esau, from his father's house, from the consequences of who he had become. There was nowhere left to run, and in that darkness, alone, with everything stripped away, something grabbed him. Then came the night at the Jabbok. Jacob was alone. His family had crossed the river ahead of him. His possessions were gone, and tomorrow he would face Esau, the brother he had deceived, for the first time in 20 years. He had run his entire adult life, from Esau, from his father's house, from the consequences of who he had become. There was nowhere left to run, and in that darkness, alone, with everything stripped away, something grabbed him. The text says he wrestled with a man until daybreak. He wrestled all night, not with an enemy, not with a stranger, with something that knew him. This is what total burnout actually is. It is not a bad week. It is not tiredness. It is the moment when the body and the mind finally refuse to continue sustaining a life that is fundamentally misaligned. It is the crisis that arrives precisely when there is nowhere left to run and nothing left to hide behind. And it is, psychologically, a necessary intervention. Because the thing Jacob was wrestling was not trying to destroy him. It was trying to name him. At dawn, after a night of wrestling, the figure did something strange. He touched Jacob's hip and dislocated it. And Jacob, exhausted, injured, unable to continue, held on tighter. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Still asking for a blessing. Still reaching. But then the figure asked a question that changed everything. "What is your name?" 4 words. What is your name? Not your title. Not your achievements, not what you have built or stolen or accumulated, your name. And Jacob, for the first time, said it plainly. Jacob, supplanter, deceiver, the one who grabs. He named himself honestly, for the first time in his life, and the figure said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. You will be called Israel, because you have wrestled with God and with people and have overcome." The new name was not given because Jacob had finally performed well enough. It was given because he had finally stopped performing. He had wrestled with his shadow until dawn. He had said his real name out loud, and he walked away limping. The limp is the part most people skip over. Jacob was permanently changed by that night. He did not walk the same way again. And that is not a footnote. It is the point. Authentic identity, the kind that comes from wrestling honestly with who you actually are, leaves a mark. It is slower than the performance, more visible, more vulnerable. You cannot sprint in a disguise when you are limping in your own skin. But you are moving in a direction that is actually yours. Here is what this means practically. First, name the exhaustion accurately. If you are burnt out, do not call it overwork. Ask the harder question. Am I exhausted from effort, or am I exhausted from pretending? Because the two require completely different responses. Second, notice what you are wearing. Whose definition of success are you chasing? Whose approval is the blessing you are trying to steal? The costume feels necessary because it has worked, but the applause it earns will never reach the person underneath it. Third, do not run from the Jabbok. The crisis, the fracture, the night when everything goes quiet and you have to face what you have been avoiding, that is not a breakdown. That is the most important conversation of your life. The question is not whether it will come. It is whether you will stay in it long enough to come out with a new name. The limp is not the end of the story. It is the first step in the right direction. Drop a comment below. Have you ever achieved something significant and still felt completely empty afterward? That gap has a name, and more people are living in it than will ever admit it. If this kind of content speaks to you, subscribe. And the next video looks at Samson, the strongest man in the Bible, and the psychology of why the most powerful people are often the most vulnerable to the wrong relationship. I will see you there.